Hey, friends and listeners of the Switch for Good podcast. Yep, that's you. I have some really exciting news. Dotsie and I have started a Switch for Good podcast Facebook group. We created it so we can build a community of fans that will help us improve the show and deliver on the topics that you want to learn more about. So we want to hear what your favorite content is, what you want more of, and what you want less of. And if you like the length of the show, Dotsie and I are always talking about the length of the show, right, Dotsie?
Yes.
We want to tailor our show around the needs and desires of our incredible listeners, almost 500,000 of you. And it's really simple to join. Just go to our Switch for Good Facebook page. That's Switch, the number 4, and then Good. And then click on groups. And there we are, the Switch for Good podcast chat. You can post directly in the group, share ideas, talk to other listeners, and connect with like-minded folks. So go, run, join our Facebook group and tell us what you want. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another show. Dotsie and I are really happy that you're here with us. So, it's the third week in January, and studies show that this is the time when most people fall off their New Year's resolutions. Yeah, it only takes an average of 18 days. So today we're going to give you a little boost of inspiration and share our conversation with a man who is able to stick with his vow to get healthier and lose weight. But first, Dotsie and I are going to talk a little bit about our own resolutions for this year. So Dots, tell me what did you make any resolutions?
Well, I kind of squeamish about calling them New Year's resolutions because I feel like, if you don't do these 3 things you've set out, then you're a loser if you quit, it's just, magnet to being a failure. So these things for me, there are 3 of them. And I did put a lot of thought into them because you discussed this with me, I don't know, probably 6 weeks ago or something. So not so much labeled as resolutions, but more things that I want to be present with in 2022. And honestly, they are some things that in 2021, I kind of beat myself up on not doing. So they rose to the top for me. So the first one, and they are in no particular order. As you know, I'm in the midst of writing a book. But
great.
It's not.
I can't wait to read it.
It's going okay, but it's not going great because I'm having a really hard time balancing running an organization and writing a book. I now understand why people just take a year off and write a book. So I'm having a hard time finding the focused time that I need. And quite honestly and rawfully, I am feeling, I'm having feelings of feeling unworthy and feeling afraid. So, those are feelings I really want to work through and face head on going into 2022. Or here we are in 2022, so it's happening. Still feeling unworthy and afraid. So you got to help me work on that. Secondly, I want to do more for people, not just animals. I want to serve humans more. And so I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I have an idea and I will share it with you when it comes to fruition, but you were the inspiration for that. Number 3, I want to write one email or short note or text 5 days per week to a person to make them feel uplifted, supported, and loved. I used to do that and I fell off the wagon, and it's lame and it's lazy and it's and not staying committed. It literally takes about 2 minutes because it's easy to grab a person that you just, okay, that person needs some. And these are 2-3 sentence emails or texts, even shorter. So I'm staying committed to that.
I love that.
But I obviously need an accountability partner because I've started that one before and stopped it and started it and stopped it and started and stopped it. So yes, that one I want to stay committed to this year.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I only have
Yes.
one, actually.
Well, you only need one because you do all sorts of amazing,
No,
wonderful things
it's
every
not
day.
true.
So it's true.
But
I'm the
it's
one that needs a list of 20. You need one.
It's mostly because, yeah, I don't like the pressure of feeling like I have to do something. So this is actually something that I want to do that's going to be fun. And I hope that the folks who are listening, their resolutions also don't have too much pressure to them, because I think that's why we end up not doing it, is because we don't enjoy it. And there has to be a reward. And Dotsie, I know you're going to get a reward, and you probably felt this when you did it before, writing those emails, because studies show that when people do that, they feel good about themselves. And that will translate into you feeling worthy for your book. You see, it all comes in one big circle. But anyway, so mine is just to listen more and talk. I guess it's actually threefold. Listen more, talk less, and don't interrupt.
I'm not interrupting you right now.
Oh, crap. Anyway, so yeah, but you can check me on that, because we chat a lot and we tend to just are so excited we talk over each other. So those are my three. And but the thing I love about this guest is that he shares with us tips. His name is Dave Wegener, folks, but you'll get tips from him on how to get on and stay on whatever self-improvement path that you've designated for yourself for 2022. And I personally, Dotsie, I know you're not going to be surprised by this, I really liked his philosophy of planning ahead to make sure that he's never without healthy food at the ready, because that's what I do. And he has really good advice about starting the changes with just breakfast. So everybody, I hope you enjoy the show, and best wishes for a really healthy, happy 2022. And if you want to write to us and share with us your resolutions, Dotsie and I would love to hear them.
I might even share a few, but we won't use your name. They're inspire people. So do write in. podcast@switchforgood.org.
Well, today we have another everyman success story, which personally, they're my favorite. Dave Wegener is a high school visual arts teacher, husband, and father, but he's here today to walk us through his life-changing journey of losing over 120 pounds with a plant-based diet. It all started in 2016 when he refused to take triglyceride medication after his doctor informed him his numbers were through the roof. He made a deal with his doc that he'd reduce his calories, keep a food journal, and walk 30 minutes a day. These minor changes led him to forks over knives and other plant-based resources. He cut out processed and animal foods and lost 60 pounds in 4 months. Another 40 came off as he upped his exercise and went mostly whole foods plant-based. And now he's lost even more. Dave is living proof that you don't have to overhaul your diet overnight, but taking that first step can lead to positive, lasting change. We are so glad to have you on the show, Dave. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure and an honor.
So let's start with your childhood, because so many of our food things start there, right, Dotsie?
So much so.
What kind of messaging did you get about food growing up?
Well, I would sum it up in basically three things. Food was something to soothe, and it was a reward, and it was something to seize, meaning while it's cheap or free or you're at a buffet or something, load up was kind of the message, because this may be the only meal you get today, or we're going to skip dinner, or whatever the case may be. But food was often, if you're feeling bad, bad day, feeling down, it was something to go to for comfort. And it seemed like, and of course, our parents, they always do the best they can, because they do what they know, what they grew up with, what they learned as well, and they pass that on. But I think in my family, and my parents will disagree, I hope they're not hearing this, but they will disagree probably to some degree, that food was a reward, where if we could think of an occasion to go out to eat, or to use a coupon that my mother clipped from the newspaper or the circular, we'd do it. At the drop of a hat, there was some reason to celebrate, we'd go have something to eat.
I'm very interested in your military service, you joined the Air Force, and I've often wondered if kind of the attitude around food was somewhat similar to the quote education that I got as a high level athlete. What was their thinking around food? Was it talked about a lot? What was the pull towards specific types of food? Did you feel that was another layer of challenge for you in this department?
Well, I must say, in basic training, it's easy to lose weight. You're so active, marching all the time, doing exercises, a limited time at meals to eat your food. Plus, in the Air Force basic training, I don't know if they still do this, but before you even ate any of your food, you were required to drink 2 glasses of water. And if you didn't drink your water, everybody in the mess hall heard about it, because your drill instructor, your training instructor would point you out, single you out, and yell at you, and you're supposed to drink your water. But it was easy to lose weight in basic training. But when it came to tech school and being in the regular service, it was easy to put on weight because you're eating basically ad libitum, as much as you want in the chow hall, the dining halls, because there was no limit. You could eat what you wanted, and it was easy for people to gain weight. And I saw that a lot of my seniors, master sergeants, had the bellies, they had the big waistlines, and the Air Force finally started cracking down. At the time, I was almost out of the service, and they came up with a weight management program, or they may have had it already, but they started enforcing it. And I think they were looking for ways to kind of get rid of people and trim back on expenses. So they were looking for personnel to just sort of say, if you can't meet the standard, you're out of here. And I was close to getting out, and I got put on the weight management program, and I had to lose, I think, 6 pounds to get under my maximum. And I did it in 6 months. And the Air Force helped me because they gave me an extra hour at my lunch to go work out if I wanted to. And so I took advantage of that. I'd go running and use the gym, which is right next to the dining hall as well. And didn't really watch what I ate, just exercised more. But it took 6 months to lose those 6 pounds. So.
Do you feel like the reason that you were heavy as a child and then into adulthood was your portion size, or what you were eating, or lack of exercise?
I think it's probably all three. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we were taught to load up. My mother would often say, better to have too much than not enough. And that was sort of the modus operandi around the table. And leftovers, we probably had leftovers, but I remember being urged to sort of finish everything and have seconds and so forth. And the kind of food we ate was pretty greasy, pretty oily. I mean, they may not think of it as that, but it was butter, mayonnaise, sour cream. I wasn't a big fan of cheese like other people in my family were, but cheesy items, a lot of meat. I grew up basically the son of a farmer, as my father. My dad grew up on the farm, and we would spend our summers out in Kansas visiting relatives. And meat was just a part of every meal. If there wasn't meat on the table with the meal, the men would sort of push back from the table like, I can't eat this, there's the meat. And so in Colorado, I mean, where I grew up, it was beef country. And it was just kind of a standard thing. Meat was part of every meal.
That was kind of the culture of food from mom and dad, but you and your brother had a fridge in the basement where your all's bedrooms were. What did you and your brother stock the fridge with?
Well, it was stocked by my parents, by my mother, who's, coupon clipper, bargain hunter.
Yeah.
And the bar we had a finished basement that had this nice wet bar. My dad did a wonderful job building this thing, and it was really cool the way it lit up and so forth. But it was stocked with, Chips Ahoy and Doritos and Fritos, and anything you wanted while you're sitting there watching television just 10 feet away, I could tell my brother, hey, go get us a bag of chips. And we'd open them up and eat them while we're watching, afternoon TV after getting home from school. And the fridge behind the bar was loaded with soda and so forth. So, and each evening that my dad felt like we'd make popcorn and would be drenched in butter. And so we're big time snackers, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So as an adult, after you got out of the military and started working, raising a family, what was going on with you physically after all these years, a couple decades of overeating and eating a lot of food that wasn't healthy for you?
Mm-hmm.
How did it manifest itself in terms of your blood pressure and things like that?
Well, I noticed that my skin was always really kind of red. I chalked it up to what people call rosacea, though I never really had that diagnosed. But in looking back at like photos of myself, I could see that I always had this sort of a redness, or sometimes like a puffy look to my face. And I noticed that the waist sizes of my pants sort of crept up year after year. And I would weigh myself and say, okay, I'm not going to go over 250. That's it. I'm going to stay the same. I'm going to lose weight, do something about it. Okay, 260. That's it. I'm not going any higher. Okay, 270, 280. I remember being in college and newly married, and similar habits in our new household where we lived north of the campus and here in Washington. We would try to finish the leftovers. I would anyway. And I would do a lot of snacking, eating on the go, because I was taking classes at the college and working with my wife downtown, and it'd be easy to eat while on my way and on my way home. And so those things began to manifest themselves just in an ever expanding waistline and feeling probably rather lethargic, tired, and otherwise, I was pretty lucky. I didn't really have any warning signs like some people have with high blood pressure or high blood sugar yet. I felt really lucky until.
Yeah. Well, in March of 2016, you hit 335 pounds and your triglycerides were 424, which a healthy range, let's say, is under 160. And your doctor suggested, or I don't think suggested, said you have to go on triglyceride meds. But you were different and you didn't want to do that. And so you agreed to keep a food journal, reduce calories, walk for a certain amount of time every day. This is, I'm just going to say, fairly abnormal. Most people, including different ones in my family, are like, give me the pill. I'd rather die before cut out my steak and ice cream. What made you different?
You did your homework. Thank you.
Well, it's the whole team is behind this. It's not just me.
In that what is it? February, March, that'd be late winter, early spring of 2016. Mm-hmm. I had gone to see my doctor, but I had seen him in February, and he called me back for a follow-up in March. And that was when he revealed to me my high numbers of triglycerides. And that concerned him because he knew that my mother was diabetic. Her mother, my grandma, was diabetic. My mother's brother, an uncle of mine, was diabetic. And so diabetes ran on my mother's side of the family pretty strongly. And so he wanted to put me on prescription meds because of the high triglycerides. And he said, if there's a way you could lose weight like you've done in the past, because I had lost weight previously on a few occasions, following some fad diets and things he'd recommended. Because the other thing great about my doctor was that he was open to ideas, and he knew he didn't have the one answer to help me lose the weight. Generally speaking, he knew that sugar was bad. He called it the FDA approved poison. Oh. And but he would hand things to me to give a try, like sugar busters, and we did testosterone injections and so forth at one point, and they lasted for a while, but I would never lose more than maybe 10 or 20 pounds, and I'd gain it right back again. And so anyway, with the triglycerides and the meds he wanted to put me on, I just said, I don't want to do it. And at the time, my parents were going through a really difficult time with some surgeries. My mother was experiencing trouble with her legs and clotting and some back problems. And I was just thinking, oh, I really don't want to pass on to my kids and my wife the troubles that my parents were experiencing. And particularly my mom. My mom had kind of had a lifetime of surgeries that I grew up. I remember as a kid being in the hospital late at night in my pajamas with my brother because my mom had been suffering from something. And that happened many times, and I just didn't want to go there. So I had told my doctor, no, I don't want to do it. So let's come up with something else. And that's when he said, well, let's do this. And that's when he said, how about we limit you to 2,800 calories a day? You keep a food journal. And I said, can I draw what I eat? Like keep it in my sketchbook? He said, whatever works for you, let's do it. And for 30 minutes a day. And what was the other thing?
You wrote down your food, you exercised for 30 minutes a day, and you'd reduce your calories. That's
it. Yeah. So, and I was amazed. I mean, that day I remember walking out of the office and I immediately took a nice long 2-hour walk. And instead of going out for my usual fish and chips and fries, I still had the fish, but I had a salad instead. And that night, when we were celebrating my brother, or my son's birthday, we were celebrating his birthday, and instead of having the pizza that they had, I had a salad instead. So I meant business, and didn't know where it would lead exactly, but I really wanted to see something happen. And it was amazing how quickly weight started coming off. And it wasn't from having gone vegan right away. It was just starting to really pay attention to what I was putting into my mouth.
And how did you feel when the weight started coming off? What changed in your life, in your body, in your head?
Well, obviously the pants started getting looser, and I started feeling lighter on my feet. But what was amazing to me was, as I was keeping track page by page of what I was eating, was how come when I eat this, I still have room in my day, because I was counting calories. I still have room in my day for a dessert or a snack tonight or a bigger dinner or whatever. Why is that? And so I wanted some answers to these questions. And I knew what everybody knows about calories in, calories out, but what is it about the food? And that led to wanting to read books because I had watched certain documentaries. I had seen, before I watched Forks Over Knives, I'd seen the movie Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And my big takeaway from that film was not so much the juicing, because even though I toyed with the idea of juicing, I never did it. The big takeaway for me from that film was the idea of flipping the ratio of plants to animal products. And so that really hit home for me. And but anyway, I realized that it was the more I ate foods that were plant-based or foods that had been minimally processed, the easier it was to feel full and meet my calorie limit for the day.
Did you start to see that this wasn't a diet? Because before you said you tried all these different diets, low carb, high fat, slim fast. You've done testosterone injections, exercise, you even exercised, right, to try and get rid of weight. But did you see this somehow as different? Is that why you were able to keep it and lose much more than the 10 or 20 pounds that you used to use on the other things you tried?
Yeah, I saw it as a beginnings of a lifestyle change, because I was amazed at how easily the weight came off. I mean, it was simple. I mean, not easy, because you have to do it. It requires some sacrifice, of course, but I was amazed at how easy it was for this weight to go away. And I thought, why didn't anybody tell me this before? Why didn't I know this before? So that really just it just astonished me. I couldn't believe it because I wanted to tell everybody I could, if you just switched your food, you could lose that weight. Because I'd see people and think, I was you. I mean, I was 100 pounds overweight or more, and my clothes were, stretched to the limit, and I was wearing size 54. And I see people who are that big and who are having difficulty, and I wanted just to, like shake them, wake them up about the food, but you can't do that. But it was just so miraculous to finally see that my weight was going down to the point where I hadn't been since I got married.
It's always really empowering as you start something new, which so many people are here in the new year. And, you go 21 days or 30 days, and then it really starts to get so much easier. But those beginning steps, talk to me about your psychology, where your head was. What were the sticking points? What was hardest? When did you want to quit?
Well, I don't know if I ever wanted to quit. I just at times would be maybe tempted to have foods that I used to have, but then temptation, I'd say, wasn't that strong because I would think about when I was eating that food, what it felt like.
There you go.
What my body felt like, and so that's that fish and chips or that burger or the fries sound good, but it tastes better being thinner.
Yeah.
Like,
I just have to say, Alexander, this hit me like a ton of bricks in the most wonderful way bricks can hit you. Dave, that is just, it's so spot on for me as well as a former anorexic, that as I was going through recovery, that is one of the essential tools that I used. Was as soon as I wanted to start restricting, is I would take myself right back to that place when I was really sick. And you were sick too, right?
Yeah.
You had high blood pressure,
Yeah.
blood sugar, snoring, sleep apnea, acid reflux. I mean, the list is endless. And I would go back to that place of what that felt like, and get really put myself there. And you did that same thing. And that's powerful for people to hear.
I tell you, I do not miss. I think one of the worst things was, and I thought this was attributed to a certain kind of food that I used to. My theory was it was something acidic like tomatoes or spaghetti sauce, but having the acid reflux in the middle of the night, where I'm suddenly awakened because I feel like I'm going to vomit, and getting up and coughing, trying to clear that taste out of my throat in the bathroom, and knowing others can hear me, and then sitting up upright, because if I go back and lie down, flat, that stays with me in my throat for a long time. But if I sit up for a while, and then in this case, it would be maybe half hour, an hour, just waiting for things to subside and go back to normal. That was awful. And my wife would lose sleep. I don't know if my kids would lose sleep or not, but I would lose sleep. And it was miserable.
You also mentioned body odor was something that you used to have to contend with when you had much more fat on you, and constipation, which is, we think, oh, well, if someone's eating a lot, then things probably move through them, but that wasn't the case. And now you don't have an issue at all. But tell us a little bit about those things that you struggled with and how they've changed now.
Yeah. The odor, whether it's body odor or bad breath, those became particularly strong and noticeable when I was doing Sugar Busters / Atkins keto. It started with Sugar Busters, and Sugar Busters I thought was so similar to Atkins, I kind of called them one and the same, because it was all about eating, high fat, low carbohydrate. Sometimes they had slogans like avoid white foods like onions and potatoes and pasta and bread, so forth. But eating all that animal product, I think, contributed to the smells, whether it's from the breath or the skin, the sweat as well. I know you ladies like to talk about things like like BMs and what was it? You were talking in one of your videos about skin, brushing off dead skin and so forth. I'm into those sorts of things because, hey, it's all stuff. It's all part of these bodies, these organisms, moving through the earth. But
yeah, we just like to be honest about it, about things that have to do with our bodies, because health requires us to be comfortable with whatever our body gives us. So you have to look at it square in the eye and deal with it. And it sounds like you did struggle with constipation, but now you're fine because of all the fiber. You're a big proponent of fiber.
What I was going to say was, in the changes I've made, I've noticed that I don't have to bathe as frequently as I used to, which is nice in a house where I live, where we don't have a shower. We have just a bathtub. It's a great big old clawfoot bathtub, but I've never installed the shower since after rebuilding our house since the flood. But and I mean, if I had the BO I had back in before 2016, I wouldn't be able to do that. But that's just kind of one of those little hygienic things I noticed. But what else? You mentioned not only the body odor, but what was the other item you mentioned?
Oh, constipation.
Constipation, yes. That used to take, my family knew that if I had to use the bathroom, I would be in there for quite a while. But now it's like, less than 5 minutes, I'm out of there again. And that's been amazing. And it's like clockwork every day, at least once in the morning, sometimes 2 or 3 times. And that's all because of the fiber, of course. So.
Yeah. If you want to set goals, Alexandra is so vegan and plant-based that she doesn't have to use soap in the shower anymore. And I have not reached that. I would stick to high hell, but
I try not to use a lot of soap. That's true, because I want to keep that microbiome all on my skin. But every so often I do, like for special occasions. Before this interview.
So you may edit some of this out.
No, we're leaving that in. Speaking about all of those, I don't know, I guess you could just really call them side effects of meat, dairy, and eggs, and processed food. But we've mentioned that the high blood pressure and high blood sugar and the sleep apnea, acid reflux. Also, you had hernias, edema, eczema, acne, rosacea. I mean, the list is really endless. And I'm curious about what you have learned about what all of these conditions or side effects have in common.
I just noticed that it's the food that's made the difference. I still have the hernia, for example. I know it's still there, but when I was eating a low plant diet instead of high plants, or more plant-based, that was something I had to, with my own hands, kind of adjust, push on, press on, in order to help things move through my intestines. I don't know what part of the intestinal tract was there that was bulging through, but that hasn't been a problem ever since going plant-based. More fiber keeps things moving is my theory. I think it's what's happening. My current doctor kind of goes along with this thinking as well, but it hasn't been an issue. And I thought I'd have to have surgery to fix that because it was getting bigger. But I don't know if hernias can heal, if they can actually, if the muscle wall tissue can actually rebuild itself, but it hasn't been a problem. So anyway, I attribute it all to the plants.
Yeah. At least some of those things are certainly connected to inflammation in our body, from inflammation in our arterial walls to the gut to our digestive tract. So maybe not all, but certainly some, as far as from what I've learned on this podcast, or we've learned, Alexandra, right? In relation to inflammation. It's incredible how that changes. And the constipation too, that definitely has something to do with inflammation. So yeah.
But you do say that you're still a food addict. So Dotsie mentioned the beginning. Changing is so hard for so many of us. As a food addict, where did you put those feelings or those habits? What can you give our audience some tips to make these changes and stick to them?
Well, I think, once an addict, always an addict, because you've learned over a lifetime to go to certain things when something gets triggered, whether it's an emotional trigger or a physical trigger. So, for example, even now, end of my day, well, my day will start out really well. I get a lot of things done early in the morning. I go through the day with my students, and I have all these things. I think at the end of the day, I'll take care of this and all these to-do list items. But when that end of the day comes, more often than not, I don't want to do them, and I feel like I should reward myself because it's been such a tough day, and I've worked such a long day. And what I've learned is that there are alternatives to rewarding myself. If it's going to be with food, there are better alternatives than a bag of chips or that sandwich from McDonald's at the truck stop on the way home. For example, slice up an apple, take it with me out of the office. That requires some planning ahead, of course, so you have those things. Or if I'm going to stop at the grocery store, instead of walking to the bakery aisle to look for any markdown items they might have, go to the produce section and get a bag of carrots. You'd be surprised how good carrots taste while driving down the road and thinking about your day and just kind of flowing with the commute. They are pretty tasty, and you know what? You cannot overeat on carrots. Yeah, I even like a couple of cans. I keep a can opener in my car so that if I'm feeling peckish, I can get a can of corn or a can of beans and eat those instead of chips. I mean, even 3 cans of corn or 3 cans of beans are not going to be nearly the amount of fat and processed content of a bag of Doritos or Cheetos. So there are healthier alternatives if you're going to eat to make yourself feel better. And even better than that, of course, is go for a walk or make something. I don't feel like my day is complete unless I've made something, whether it's drawing or writing somebody a letter, cooking a meal. If I'm not creating something, my day is sort of incomplete. So I got to channel that energy that I would use for overindulging on food for doing something that's creative. That's me.
Yeah. And you know that it'll make you feel better than if you did have those chips, because you remind yourself how you felt after eating those chips.
Definitely. I mean, and I tell my students, are you a consumer or are you a producer? Because that's kind of what makes the difference with people is I want to be a producer rather than just a consumer. I got to give back somehow or I don't feel complete.
I love that. You have just staying right on that subject of the actual food. You have a few philosophies in terms of eating peasant food and eating the way earlier natives ate. What do these mean to you, and where do they show up in your meals every day?
Well, peasant food, I like that term, and I learned that from Rip Esselstyn because he uses that a lot, and it's so true. Of course, peasants probably had meat once in a while, of course, but more as like a condiment. And Dr. Hans Diehl is the one who often says, eat food as grown. And what was the other one? Eating Native American. When people ask me what kind of food I eat, I say, well, I eat American food, but I eat true American food, the early American food, corn and beans and squash and sweet potatoes, rather than the American food that we know of as fast food and processed food. But I keep it really simple. It's, rice, corn, beans, potatoes, legumes, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. And it's all you really need.
Do you try and go for lower fat, or are there any guidelines that you keep yourself to? A certain amount of calories? You started off restricting calories. Do you not count calories anymore? Do you weigh yourself to check in? What kind of things do you do so that you stay on track?
I stopped counting calories. I don't know what year it was, but it was maybe about 2 years ago. I think it was when I decided to just become whole food plant-based and not include animal products any longer in my diet or in our household. My wife and I agreed to just sort of stop buying those things and stocking those things. But I think with the success of finding the right foods to eat, I wanted to break free of not having to be so micromanage the numbers so much any longer, because that takes time to sit down with a chart and look things up. I didn't want to obsess about that. I wanted to be free to just eat and not have to think about the numbers so much by just choosing the right foods. But I forgot the rest of your question. Sorry.
Do you weigh yourself? Or do
Oh.
you have certain foods that you have to stay away from? What kind of guidelines are you using? Just even if they're looser, which is great advice, to keep yourself on this healthy path.
Right. I am very conscientious about the fat content. When I buy foods that are processed in any way, I'm always curious about the fat content. And I get it, and I try to keep the math really simple. I just add a digit to whatever the fat grams are, and that tells me how many of those calories are fat calories. And I try to keep that
percentage wise. Is that why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I try to keep those fat calories, the fat percentage, under 20%, ideally under 10%.
So does that mean that each serving has to have under 2 grams of fat? Is that what I'm gathering? If it has.
Yeah, that's ideal. I think, because that's, well, let's see. I'm going to grab something to look at it here. So, for example, well, so this doesn't. A lot of my stuff has no fat in it. So yeah.
Well,
the highest fat content food I can think of that I eat is maybe when I have anything with nuts in it. Or sometimes some things like, for example, this tuna, it's not really tuna, good catch tuna, fish-free tuna. It has a little bit of fat in it, but if you do the numbers, it's like you said, it's less than 20 or less than 10% fat. Now, the weighing myself, honestly, I haven't stepped on the scale in probably over half a year. Part of me doesn't want to know what the number is because of COVID. I know it in the waist size I am wearing. I'm up about 2 waist sizes from what I was at my lowest point. And I've been holding steady there, and that's getting loose. So, and I know from when I wear this size pants, which is a 42, that I'm at about 230 pounds. So, and that's just from that chart that I kept. I knew what the waist size was at the time I was a certain weight.
So you did keep charts, but now you're loosening up a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm on my way back down again because I want to get back to where I was at about 200 pounds, which was in the summer of 2019. That was the lowest that's the lowest I had been since I had been in the Air Force.
Wow. So you gained about 25 pounds during the pandemic, and I heard you say it was just, you're just doing a little bit junkier, non-peasant veganizing your plate. So because you were or are a food addict, I don't, do you think of yourself were or are? I'm curious, but most importantly, what do you do now? Besides the visualization, instead of using food as a coping mechanism? Do you feel like you are a food addict or you were?
So I think I still am, and I still have to just deal with it because I still have those tendencies to sometimes want to reward myself, feel like I deserve something, and maybe take a break. Like even when I reached 200 pounds on the way down to 200 pounds, it was almost time to celebrate, have that slice of carrot cake, have that, even though it's non-dairy, have that, frozen dessert or whatever. And so I was in kind of a celebrative mode after getting down to 200 pounds. because, and I wasn't going to kind of, just cut it all loose and go nuts, because I didn't want to get back to 335, 340 pounds. So it's, and I say I'm never going back there. And for the rest of my life, I want to continue doing what I'm doing, because I know too much now to ever go back. I mean, just health wise, and the books I've read learning about animal agriculture and what it's like for the animals, I believe eating misery brings misery. And I mean, I saw it in myself, and I see it in others as well. And I could never go back to that. But what happened with the pandemic, and it coincided with getting down to 200 pounds, was in March, when things shut down and we all went into isolation. I suddenly had a lot of free time. And it started with running like crazy. I mean, I would run on the weekends, but I was running every day for 6 miles, about 2 hours. I'm a slow runner, but I would do about 6 miles around town every day. And it was so easy to continue that trend down to 200 pounds. And at the same time, Forks Over Knives had received my article I'd written, my story. And when they said they wanted to print it, it was like June or July, I was down to 200 pounds. And then when school came back and it was in remote, my whole routine changed. I suddenly was tied to my computer more, sitting at my desk more. I didn't have the free time I thought I was going to still have to go and run and to prepare my meals, because everything just got upended. And of course, there were good things too, like Zoom was kind of this new toy I got to mess with, but I was tied to the computer screen so much. And I just started to find myself again and get back into create a new routine for preparing my meals, getting my exercise, and so forth. And it's been hard to kind of find that again because of what we've all been dealing with. And on top of that, my younger son, in March 2019, he began a series of surgeries to save his one good eye. He was born with vision in only one eye, and his retina began to detach in the other good eye. So we had these surgery appointments that were 2 hours down the road in Portland, and that required testing in advance to get the appointments and the surgeries. It was just kind of nuts.
How is your son now?
He's great. He's doing great.
Good. I'm so glad. So it sounded like it was an upset routine, and that you didn't find your footing with the new routine right away, and so the pounds sort of crept back on. Did you say, oh, I'll wait till the end of the pandemic? Why did 25 pounds creep on and not just, I guess, 10 or 5? What did you just kind of give up in some areas, or were you struggling to lose weight, trying to find a routine?
I think it was the struggle trying to find the routine.
Yeah.
Because I was doing a lot of eating on the run, and again, choosing better, healthier things than what I used to eat before going plant-based. But still, they were not the healthiest as when I make it myself. When I batch cook chili for the next 4 days, or when I batch cook, rice and beans or whatever. I had to find my footing again.
You're at school now.
Yes.
So anybody who wants to watch our YouTube channel, you'll see he's in his classroom, but you'll see also that there's quite a bit of those foods that he's talked about, the peasant foods, the canned foods, the canned beans and corn at your school. Tell us why and how this has helped you. Because I think a lot of people, they might be good at home, but they fall apart at work, and you made sure that didn't happen.
Yeah, at work, I mean, everybody knows there's always stuff that people bring in, and they mean well. I mean, because they don't know any better. But the office has treats. Here's gifts from students. The week before the winter break. Domino's Pizza, teacher appreciation, free pizza.
Right.
I've got these things. I kind of left them here from last week, but yeah, if you don't plan ahead to eat what you want to eat for the sake of your own health, you're left to just sort of eat whatever's cheap and easy and convenient. And the cafeteria food, bless their hearts, they're trying to offer better, healthier choices. But even if you get a salad, if you're going to put dressing on it, there aren't many options for things that are fat-free or low sugar. It's pretty oily and greasy down at the cafeteria. And staff potlucks, people bring a lot of things to those potlucks that are not the healthiest, even though they're healthier. Some might be healthier than others. So if you don't plan ahead and prepare food for yourself, I don't know, you find yourself either starving or eating foods that aren't going to be your friend.
Yeah. You've written, and you're speaking about that now, that sometimes you feel alone in this lifestyle. And I think anybody listening that's vegan or almost entirely plant-based can relate. What are some strategies that you use to not feel so alone? And do you end up opening up to a lot of your colleagues at work about your story?
I know I know that I'm in a minority. We're in a minority. And that's just kind of the way it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to surround myself with like-minded folks. Of course, it's virtual in some cases like this. But for example, when I'm preparing my breakfast here at the office, I will turn on like one of your podcasts and listen to it, or something from Rip Esselstyn's Plant Strong or Dr. McDougall. I like it when the lectures and the things are commercial free, which is great. And I'll do that just to kind of remind myself of other people who are doing this as well, others who have struggled, where they've been, where they came from, and their successes. And I think that's important. I don't know a whole lot of people here at work who are doing what I'm doing. I know of one other teacher who is vegan, but I don't see him a whole lot, mainly only at our faculty get-togethers. And there are people who are aware of what I'm doing, who've asked maybe a few questions of me, or something came up in a conversation, I was able to share something with them. But even though colleagues of mine know that I've lost the weight because they saw how I was before 2016, they see, like I've got this handy too, the photos of me before, and how I look now and how I feel now. But they haven't really wanted to know a whole lot about what I did. I think they probably have assumptions of what I've been doing. And I would imagine most of them are probably wrong. Because I have some folks who have told me, hey, you really inspired me to lose some weight. And they did lose some weight, but they went about it using something like ketosis or some kind of medication. And I'm not sure that it's lasted for them. It was unsustainable. So I've got a colleague I see once in a while here around the school district who knows that by getting off dairy, it has really been a positive change for his health. I don't know about anything else that he's said goodbye to as far as animal products, but he really noticed a difference with eliminating the dairy. And that began because of sharing with him. He was here doing a job one day and he was hungry for something, and I offered him a cookie. But I gave him one of those. You ever heard of Lenny and Larry's cookies?
Yes.
I gave him one of those. And he came back and told me the next day, said, dang, that cookie was so filling. I was like so full for the rest of the day. It's like it's packed with fiber. And so that led to talking about dairy and troubles that he was having with dairy, or troubles he was having with his digestive system. And I said, well, you might try, this, eliminating milk here and there. And he said, my doctor mentioned that too. So he gave it a try, and he told me that he was experiencing some very improved health because of just cutting that out. And that'll begin with just handing him a cookie.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a good thing. Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary for people that are, so many people ask us that are plant-based or vegan, like where's a good place to start? And, you could certainly start anywhere or suggest to start anywhere. But the reason I think it's so powerful to say start with dairy is because you pretty much have a 50% chance that dairy is making them sick, either from lactose intolerance or an allergy. So, half of them are going to feel better just because of that. And you don't have that, with many of the other foods that are from animals. So they usually come back at least half the time, but usually more, because it's also so inflammatory that people just feel so much better and lighter and less inflamed and more energy and, have more, vigorousness in their life when they drop it. And so then what do? They come back and they're like, why is this so dramatic? And what's next? And
I noticed with me, when I've had even just like a little dairy in some food I ate, say at a potluck or we were at a family get together, I sampled something, maybe somebody's pie they made. And I think, okay, just this one exception, rare and occasional, but I'll notice it in my skin. I'll notice like down on one of my shins, I have this eczema that kind of creeps up once in a while. And I notice that it's whenever I have the dairy, that's when it happens. But, and also with the dairy, I have this just feeling in my throat, like I can't clear it. It's always just sort of congested.
Yeah. Eczema I don't think very many people would just automatically think, I know I didn't. Dairy and itchy, rashy skin conditions. I mean, it didn't seem, Dr. Angie Sadeghi, the gastroenterologist that's been on this podcast twice, that is exactly what that was kind of her turnaround point. She had terrible eczema and it was on the top of her hands, and she's a doctor. So people are seeing her hands all day long when she sees patients, and she was so embarrassed and in pain and would wear gloves sometimes just all the time because she was so embarrassed. She got rid of the dairy and no more eczema.
We noticed it with our older son. He had skin eczema problems, and we never connected it to dairy. But having learned what I've learned, that's what I think. If you were to cut out the dairy, it wouldn't be a problem so much. But I'm not the doctor. I'm just his dad.
Right. So it's harder. Well, we do have a show with Brian Turner, who it was one of our very early shows, maybe our second show or third show.
Yeah.
And he was a bodybuilder, and he had terrible, terrible acne, and taking out the dairy totally cleaned up his skin. And he had cystic acne. And so I know a lot of teenage boys care about that. So that might be the way in with some of your students or your sons. I wanted to ask you, you have a list of, you're very organized, and you have a desire to share what you've learned over the last 5 years with others. And you've written 7 Habits of Successful Losers. Can you I know we've touched on a lot of them, but can you list them so that someone here can go, okay, yeah, I could do that and that.
Yeah, and that's not really my list.
It's not?
That's Chef AJ.
Oh, I attribute it to you. Well, we've had Chef AJ on too, and so we're a fan of hers. Shall we, did you follow this list? Did it work for you?
Well, it's posted on our fridge at home. And my wife wrote it down because she listened to a Chef AJ interview or seminar, and she thought that was very noteworthy. But yeah, I mean, I have it here in front of me if you want me to read through it. Okay, I'll read through it. First of all, eat simply. And that's because variety leads to overeating or non-compliance. So, and for example, I mean, I love getting like the Forks Over Knives magazines and all the recipes. And I mean, there are hundreds, millions of recipes out there. But as much as it would be great to try this, or, ooh, that looks really beautiful, let's make that, soon. We have our favorites. I have my favorites, and there's nothing wrong with that. McDougall would say, and he does say, I eat the same thing over and over again. Sure, there are special occasions where we make something special, but otherwise, I'm happy with what I eat, and it's been my friend, and so why change? So keep it simple. Secondly was get calories from minimally processed starches, veggies, and fruit. Avoid restaurants and prepared processed foods. practice some form of abstinence. And Chef AJ
Yeah.
talks about abstinence equals freedom.
What is abstinence to you?
Abstinence means staying away from something that you know is probably a trigger food, something that will lead you back when you don't want to go back. Move daily, even if it's just 30 minutes. I try to move at least 30 minutes a day, walking. I often park as far as I can from most stores entrances so that I have to get my walk in somehow, get my steps in. Another item is always be prepared. Plan ahead. Can't emphasize that enough. Environment is key. Maintain a clean environment. If it's in your house, it's in your mouth. Or if it's in your space, it's in your face. If it's in your office, it's in your orifice. So watch out.
That's great. Thank you. That's really, I think, a great sum up. So thanks to AJ, and thanks for your tips on how you do it too. I think hearing your the way you implement it helps people. So
all hail AJ.
Yes.
She's awesome.
So there's folks who are really struggling with their weight. They want to lose weight. It's the new year. And there are one or two things you could tell them and help them get started. And even actually love to hear like a favorite meal too, because you obviously the food is what did it for you.
Yeah.
The exercise sort of kept you feeling good, so you didn't eat as badly, but it really was the food.
Well, I mean, after losing all that weight, I wanted to move. I mean, I had so much energy, and I get cold. If you notice, I'm sitting here warming my fingers because I get cold easier now. I mean, I used to have so much insulation I'd carry on my body, but I would say if anybody wants to lose weight, first thing to do is look at the food that you're eating. And you're not going to change everything at once. It doesn't happen that way. I don't think it happens that way for anybody. You start with one thing. With me, it started with taking out my wallet in front of my doctor and ripping up the McDonald's coupons, the receipts that on the back of those receipts had, get a free one next time you buy one at McDonald's. I would carry those with me because that was the come on to come back again and again and again. So to break that cycle, I took them out and I ripped them up, and I said, okay, instead of McDonald's on the way home, I will just get a bag of carrots or something like that. But I would say find out what foods that you really like to eat that would be healthier options, and make a point of eating those for your meals instead of the things that are high fat, they're high in animal proteins, etc. The big change for me came with breakfast. And instead of eating I forget what it's called now. It was a pancake-like, it tasted like pancakes, but it was a sausage sandwich at McDonald's. Instead of that, I thought, okay, I'll just make myself a really big bowl of oatmeal each morning, kind of like Rip's Big Bowl. But, and that started with getting myself a rice cooker and a few ingredients I have here at my desk to easily make my bowl of porridge every morning with some fruit. And it's always good. And in fact, I like it so much, I could eat it for every meal if I had to. But that was a big change. And that was just one change, oatmeal instead of McDonald's. So if you can find that one thing to start with, do it. You gotta know your food.
And I love that you just said, I like it so much I could eat it whenever or all the time. That's the other thing is make the change, but make sure you like it. Because that's when we don't stick, right? If we're making, I don't know, cardboard food that doesn't have any flavor or taste, dive into the world of herbs and spices, which I probably knew like 6 herbs and spices when I was an omnivore, and now it's at least 30 or so. It's just that whole world opens up. That's where all of our flavor comes anyway. But that is such a good point. Like your food, and you still can.
Yeah, because you won't feel deprived. And I think people get sad when they lose their friends that are that sandwich, for example. But because you found a substitute, they can look forward to that instead. It's a way to wean ourselves off our need to have food to solve a lot of problems.
Right.
right? Because in the beginning, sorry, Dave.
Go ahead. I was going to say, because yeah, in the beginning, almost any change you make, especially like with me, I was over 300 pounds. Any change you make toward more plants and less fat is going to be a positive change, and you're going to see results. I'm at that stage now where I'm still a bit overweight. I'm not in the healthy BMI category yet, but I'm fine tuning now, and the exercise helps kind of supercharge what I'm eating, supercharges the diet. But if you're obese and you make any kind of change, like, okay, even if you love pancakes, if you ate pancakes instead of the sausage, eggs, and maybe toast or buttered toast you have for breakfast, even if you had the pancakes themselves instead of the other stuff for breakfast, you would still see a change, I would bet. And if you were learning to cut out maybe the butter that would go on the pancakes and just had syrup, and I'm saying this from experience because I used to go to Denny's sometimes and I would get their all you could eat pancakes for it was like $4 pre-COVID, $4, all you could eat pancakes. But I would eat just the pancakes with syrup, and I'd get their special like harvest grain, multi-grain. I don't think they offer it anymore. But even that was a better option than their slams or grand slams.
Mhm.
They're just dripping with grease. So anyway, any change you can make for the better, do it.
And what tweaks do you say now you're for those who just want to lose, just 20 pounds or 25 pounds, what kind of tweaks are you making so that you can get down to that weight that made you want to celebrate?
Yeah. Well, I know, and this comes from having learned from McDougall and AJ as well, that if you load up with veggies and keep your calories that you take in to the lower calorically dense foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, you can't help but lose weight. It's just that when we eat those things and they have any added oil or they've been highly processed to the point that they're flour, it's harder for the weight to come off. So I'm trying to fine tune what I eat now, where I am considering, do I really need to eat 3 meals a day? Because anymore, I think about, am I eating just because it's time to eat? Am I eating just because everybody else is sitting down at the table and I should join them and eat something with them? Am I really hungry? And I haven't really thought about that before in my previous 50 years of life. It was just something I did. And so now, after having had a big breakfast and a decent lunch, I often feel like I don't really even need to eat another meal. I might just have some kind of light snack later instead. So that's where I'm kind of just fine tuning, because I'm just kind of rethinking now why I eat and why does it need to be so often. So because it's easy to, like I said, I'm a volume eater. It's easy to overdo it, I think, with the amount of food, even if it's good food.
Right. Great.
Yeah. I get so empowered by transformational stories like yours, Dave. I feel like I'm just pinging. You just took what many people would see as completely impossible at 335 pounds and turned it into possible. And throughout this interview, it's been through sheer will. You definitely stayed determined. You had some patience along the way, some work ethic, visualization,
planning,
and just planning, and just this positivity that is just kind of beaming through the screen. I can see why you are successful, will continue to be successful, and just oh man, just have helped so many.
Credit goes to, I've been really lucky, very fortunate to have my wife to be on board with this, because you say it's willpower, but that's just a part of it. It's really your environment. I mean, if I didn't change my environment here in the office, if I didn't change with my wife's help, our environment at home, it would be a lot harder to do this. it would be like a daily struggle, or having to sort of keep my defenses up with the food that would be around me.
That's so many people's reality, in their and the wonderful transformation story that we started the new year with. I thought Alexandra did just a really beautiful job of traversing that challenge. Dave, you'll listen to it because she didn't have any of her kids or her husband on board at first. Yeah, because that is tough. I can't even, my husband went along with me and was like, oh, this makes sense. This is delicious. And was like very easy. And I don't know what I would do if we were having to cook 2 meals. I mean, that definitely puts a dagger in this. So.
Well, Dave, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, can they? I know that you had people writing to you after the Forks Over Knives interview. Do you feel comfortable sharing any kind of contact info, or?
Sure. They can look me up on my teacher webpage, and my contact information is there. They can get a hold of me that way.
And
my email is there, and my office phone number is there.
And the high school is Tumwater, is that right?
It's Black Hills High School, but it's in Tumwater School District.
Okay. We'll put that in the show notes because that's not going to be easy to remember anyway.
Great. Thank you so much for being on the show. You were such a wonderful guest, and I know that you'll help people get over that hump if they've made New Year's resolutions to eat healthier, closer to nature, and to maybe lose weight.
Well, thank you very much. I really just hope that, like you said, somebody realizes or feels encouraged that they can do this. I was so relieved to find out that I could actually do this. I hope they can too.
Hey folks, okay, back by very popular demand is our plant-powered plate fridge magnet, which you are going to receive for free if you leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. So here are the details. Just write your quick review. Does not need to be long, does not need to be a whole story. Just be honest and speak from the heart. Then take a quick screenshot of the review you wrote and email it to us at podcast@switchforgood.org. That's podcast@switchforgood.org. And include your mailing address so we can send you a power plate. We are doing this because the more reviews we garner, the higher we go in search results, which means more folks will learn about our podcast. So the power is in your hands. Leave us a review and zoom, your power plate arrives at your doorstep.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.